All right, so joining me here today is the producer and director of Grind, Casey La Scala. Casey, how you doing today?
I'm doing great.
Beautiful. Well, that's what we want. So we've got a couple of questions for you today, and I think I just want to start at the ground up. I want to know how Grind came to be. What was the writing and producing process like for this film?
Well, it started out, I was, back in, I grew up in Palos Verdes, kind of in that age of Dogtown skating. So I was a really big skateboarder when I was a kid. Like I used to love to skate pools and do all that stuff, back in the, that, if you've seen Dogtown, that was kind of like when I was a really, really tiny little kid. I would always like, emulate those guys. I bought an Alva board and all that stuff. And I was a skate. So skating was kind of really kind of integral into my childhood. And, so then years later, I was at a company. We were at Warner Brothers. I used to be an executive at Disney, and then I started a company at Warner Brothers, and we were just like I just saw the skating. So there was a big drought from skating for a while. It kind of everyone kind of turned to their heads about they thought skating was just like so passe, and then there seemed to be kind of a resurgence with street skating. Street skating kind of started ramping up, and everyone was really into street. And I was just watching all this happen and watching DC skate team, like watching some of the videos and all the skate videos and, and obviously Jackass. And I'm like, we need to make a skateboard movie. Really got to make it, just a kind of a straight ahead, fun, and I was inspired. The kind of the story was kind of inspired by all my influences back in the 80s, like the Revenge of the Nerds and, Animal House and all those great, Road Trip and all these great, like, road movies. So I started thinking like, okay, skate team, just sort of started kind of figuring out what this would look like. And just that's kind of how it started. And we started to develop it, and we kind of started thinking about doing it as almost a documentary, taking the DC skate team and seeing if we could do kind of almost like a Spinal Tap mockumentary. That's kind of how it started, where it'd be like, we'll take real skaters and we'll just like kind of like put them in, situations and kind of like have them will follow them. Okay. And so that loose reality kind of, let's kind of manipulate the reality as we're writing the scenes and kind of things that should happen and stuff. It kind of, the script kind of started taking form. And at the end of the day, we said, wait, we have a kind of a scripted, like it's really kind of moving from being an authentic kind of skate, following a bunch of great skaters and their day to day to like being kind of a bit more of a, manufactured narrative. So it's kind of like you're kind of, I don't know if we want to like, unless we embrace that. Right. So it's like, let's do it as a fun, entertaining, kids comedy of like, embracing skating. And that's kind of how that was the kind of the trajectory changed. And so then it just kind of started spinning. Warner Brothers got involved and they were super excited about it. And my past from skating really helped. I was really like, this is like, I kind of, knew the culture and was, kind of the spearhead of this as one of the projects. I mean, we had done Donnie Darko and we were doing bigger films for Warner Brothers. So this was kind of like, it was such a, a sidestep of the projects we were kind of doing, is we want to do something super fun and do it, for in a budget. And so the pieces just started kind of coming together. In fact, like when we had the script, really moving into prep, we had a very loose script. And so I don't know if you would notice, but like a lot of the stuff that happened in the course of the movie, I would be driving to set, and I'd be writing in the car, like I'd be literally writing stuff in the car, like, okay, so we'd be really kind of in a weird way, almost doing that as a documentary, but like we would be kind of like, as we go, it would start. I knew the scenes we needed to get, but in terms of inside the scenes, that was really an improvisational, kind of. I was steering the ship, but I had really my guys, my actors, my boys were fantastic because we would just get together, and I was really, we'd have let's shoot what we have on the page, right? And then let's have fun with it. Let's just like go, like, whatever you're feeling, let's go. Like, and we do takes, what I mean? Like kind of like the Adam McKay, like kind of Adam McKay, Will Ferrell, the way Adam would yell stuff out. And it was kind of like a very, very loose, fun set. And so that's kind of how Ryan kind of came to be, in terms of that part. And then, then we started making the movie.
Okay, and yeah, I think that really comes across in the film. There's just such a organic sense of like camaraderie characters. The humor just seems really natural and spontaneous, and it's one of the things I really love about the film. And I find it interesting how you said Revenge of the Nerds was one of your like influences, especially since you managed to get Donald Gibb on the cast. Like having Ogre on board must have been nice.
If you notice the cast, you'll see all of my you can pinpoint all of the kind of my all of my heroes, and working with again working with him. Yeah, I don't really necessarily get starstruck by anybody, but guys like that I do, just in terms of like this is part of my childhood and these guys are now, and and that was really, it was fun to have the opportunity of working with Bobcat, and it was all those guys that really peppered made the movie really super fun. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah. The cast you managed to get, like cameos and like major roles, was spectacular. And
Mm-hmm.
I'll be touching on that a little bit later on. But so if I read correctly, Grind was your first time as like a director. You previously focused on producing and a bit of writing. So how did you find it stepping into the director's chair for the first time?
Well, I found it actually pretty seamless because I wanted to become I came out to Hollywood. I was in Hollywood, but to become a screenwriter. I mean, I went to school to become a screenwriter, and I ended up becoming a reader. And I was reading for Michael Douglas and Carolco, and I was reading scripts and analyze. That's kind of how I made my living while I was writing. So then and that turned into kind of into I got an offer to become an executive, and then I went to Touchstone, became an so I was started out first being a screenwriter, and then moving into the kind of producerial or studio executives. I was able to kind of learn the business and learn kind of how it all operated. So a lot of my job specifically, when I was an executive at Touchstone, when I was working on movies like Ransom and Armageddon, big movies, was just kind of trying to managing the day, right? Trying to make sure you get what you need. You're focused on getting your days and following. So I had the real practical ability to kind of produce a movie, at a large scale. I had the storytelling ability, which kind of like in writing it. So I kind of those two kind of intersected to have a point of view. So I really kind of was able to. It made it a lot easier. I was always trying to figure out like directing something that someone else wrote, because I knew every aspect being the screenwriter. So it seemed like the directing was an extension of that. I mean, I already knew this. I knew ins and outs of the character story. I knew in my head what I wanted to do. And it was just a matter of kind of putting the pieces, the machine together. What the toughest part of the directing side that I think that I didn't realize until I stepped on it, but I learned very fast, is the decision making process is very very quick. You have to make especially on a smaller budget, you have to make decisions very 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 fast. You don't have time to like do multiple. I'll just do this. Like, even though it's free, you have to have a very specific point of view, and you have to get your days. So you have to make decisions, and they're constantly coming at you, and that's where it comes in. That's the big difference, is you are the guy that every decision goes to. So you're being interrupted 1,000 times while you're trying to do one thing. You have to multitask. And that's something that I think the producing really helped, the actually going on set and working with, I worked with the Russo brothers on Welcome with, Colin with their first movie, and working with different filmmakers. I learned, the machinations of trying to, answer questions and make things happen and be very, very direct. And, because you don't have a lot of time. It's just very compressed timing, because time's money, right? So I felt like the directing part of it was really, from my background, really, it made it actually fun. It was very intense, but I felt like I was in control. I didn't feel like I was like out of my realm of understanding.
Nice. And yeah, speaking of the budget, so I noticed that Grind had a particularly low budget, and I was curious, did you find any like particular challenges working with such limited funds? Because you managed to pull off like quite an impressive film. The production values are solid. Everything feels really, really professional, obviously, because it's a professional film. But was there any challenges you encountered along the way?
I think again, when you're working at that smaller budget, you end up. That's where I think the producing side of me kind of really helped, because being the director and also being the producer, I was able to kind of enter into negotiations and try to get people to do not necessarily favors, but to do everything. Everyone kind of loosening up their fees. And I think one of the things that really up until that point, I've had a pretty decent reputation as a fair guy. So what I tried to do in terms of the budget, I knew we had a lot to shoot, a lot to do for little time. So I definitely wanted to make sure that the crew and all of us had that family feeling, that we're all in this together. We're all going to war together.
Yeah.
It's not this hierarchy, and you can't, like, it's all like we are all going to battle together, and in order to do this, we have to be, all like be excited about it. So the key was to surround myself with like-minded, individuals that felt like, okay, we're doing something really special, really fun. Let's all do this, and let's, I'm not going to even for the actors as well. Once we all kind of got together, it was like making the deals through their agents. There was an ability to kind of make things work based on the enthusiasm. So I think that's on one hand. On the other hand, there's something really beautiful about working at lower budgets, because what happens is on the projects that I worked on the higher budgets, you end up like you have so many choices, and I think that chaos sometimes breeds like really good opportunity. I mean, I always go back to I reference Jaws as a perfect example. Like, if the shark worked, you don't have the movie Jaws. I mean,
Yeah.
if it worked, and it was because of the chaos of that, right? So the chaos of having to go hard and make decisions on the fly, and we're all spitting stuff out, we're trying stuff, and you gotta, if you laugh, it stays. If it don't, you're just kind of doing that. That pacing, I think, creates that level of fun. If you're kind of taking your time, and you're just, well, what should we do? And like, I don't know, and you're kind of second guessing yourself. I think sometimes that stifles the creative process. So I think that working in the budget, and this kind of was perfect for this movie. And we had a great second unit. I mean, I had Tony Hawk and all of his guys doing all the second unit stuff. So what we were able to do a lot of times, I would be working with the first team, and I'd be shooting all the principals, and second unit be setting up all the kind of skating stuff. So I would literally, I mean, I think one day I did, I think, 27 setups in one day, which is like, every little scene is a set, like a setup
Yeah.
in one day. And what I was doing was I was actually skating. I'd be shooting an interior with some, and I would jump on a skateboard and skate over to the second unit, and then I'd work a crane shot on this, and I'd skate back over and do that. And we were just doing like that. So in terms of doubling up like that, we had a really talented second unit. Tony Hawk and those guys were just, those guys were fantastic. We were able to just do it. But that's the whole shoot was like that. There was never like, okay, we shot the interior, garage scene, and okay, let's break for lunch. It was like, okay, we finished that. I got to run over here because we're street skating off the, doing this, whatever. And it's just like, it was just that. I think it made it. I mean, that made the energy. It just was really fun. It was really cool.
Yeah. Now, I find it interesting you saying you were like skating between two units as well. Because, like, for one thing, I think that's a really practical way to operate in a fast pace. But I was also reading that apparently the cast was like actively discouraged from skating around on set at the risk of injuring themselves. So were you like an exception to that rule, or am I?
I was an exception to the. I actually kind of made that rule.
Ah,
And I was the big hypocrite. But no. It was because all they were doing was trying to work on ollies. They're just trying to. And the thing is like one broken ankle, and so they were always skating. They were always skating. But when they'd see me, they'd like pick the board up or whatever, and like we'd laugh, whatever. I wasn't like a hard. But they're always working on ollies, which just scared me so much, because you know what I mean. Like one broken ankle, and now they're limp. You know what I mean? It's like, because again, just that producer in me is like, we got to stay on point. I can't have an injury. But they got to be really good skaters by the end.
awesome. Now, next question I've got is kind of a silly one, but it's one I've always wondered. So, the scene in the film where the characters actually clean up that motel room pool so that they can get free accommodation and skate in the bowl. Did you guys like actually find a motel with a dirty pool, and did you clean that up in like return for being able to film there, or am I just imagining things?
You're imagining it. So, but it was an existing pool that was thrashed. Like, we found this pool, and it was way out. It was some abandoned, crappy hotel, right outside of LA. And it was like the film at the bottom. It was all green at the bottom. It was like just very, like, that much water in it. So we actually, production designers, we put all this stuff in, and then we put our crane up and did the whole like cleaning and speed pace. But the reason we picked that pool, obviously, was they allowed us to skate in it, because once you skate in a pool, it just destroys it. So they were going to so again, when you have a very specific low budget, you have to, the budget gods have to come in at some point. We got lucky because it's an instance of that kind of movie angel coming in, that our location manager said, hey, there's a motel outside of LA that they're demoing, that they're demoing the whole thing. They have a pool there. And so we were able to get it super cheap because they were going to destroy it anyway. So we ended up like kind of cleaning it up and getting it ready for, and then we shot. That was the first, by the way, that was the first day of shooting. That was day number one. And so, yeah, so we filled it and did all that. But we, again, a little bit of luck, and it skated great. It was, I actually got in the pool and skated. I mean, I'm not a great skater, but I got in the pool and I rode around. It was so fun. Like in between like setups, I'm like, it's fun.
That's awesome. And like, did the people who were skating in the scene, were they the ones who actually cleaned the pool, or did they have like stunt cleaners, or do you remember?
We just did like, put our guys in there, just like picking a couple of things up, and we sped it up. You know what I mean? They weren't like literally, we had them cleaning for a while, and then we just keep putting them in after our crew would come in and clean up all the stuff.
Alrighty, cool. Now, getting back to talking about the cast. So one of my favorite things about Grind is that across the film, you've got comedy icons from like so many different niche groups. Like you've got Donald
Mm-hmm.
from Revenge of the Nerds, you've got Christopher McDonald, Tom Green, half the cast of Jackass, Dave Foley, Baldwin. Honestly, how did you get so many like big names and very like particular names on board with this movie?
Well, I think one of the best casting directors in the business is a gal named Nancy Nair. Nancy Nair is just worked on every one of my movies, and she is just incredible. So when we started kind of going down the list of all these different characters, like who would be good, we just started kind of throwing. She would just throw it. She would give me a list of names, and she was really, really fundamentally great about going after and getting all these wonderful. So we had lists of each, all these guys, and a lot of the lists had the same names for different characters. You know what I mean? And we just kind of started cherry picking and boom, 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 and getting it all. We were able to get the Jackass guys too. That was kind of a gift that we kind of we started peppering those guys in, and we got kind of lucky that people embraced the movie, which is because it's a super cult classic right now. It's like people. Oh, I mean, it's funny. I mean, just a funny aside, but I remember you don't know how much this movie has touched people, right? You don't, and I remember Adam Brody was shooting Mr. and Mrs. Smith, and he called me from the set, and he's like, hey, he's like, dude. Brad Pitt just told me his favorite movie's Grind. And it was like because you just don't know you know who would attract again. I think the cumulative effort of putting all these really interesting pieces of really fun talent. I mean because again, I don't toot my own horn, but I didn't really the acting as a director. I mean, your most important thing is to get your performances in frame, right? That's really what the job is. And look at the guy. If you go through the list, these are all like incredible actors that there's not a lot of like, let's talk about emoting. I mean, they just nail it, one take, boom, funny. Okay. Thanks for, what I mean? So we found our casting director, superb. And she was really instrumental in landing us all these guys.
Yeah. Oh, well, she did a spectacular job. Like it's just so nice to see all the faces together in this one film. So
Mm-hmm.
out of curiosity, do you have any like favorite behind the scenes stories from when you were like actually shooting? Like any funny ones or anything?
Uh, oh, well, this is totally random, but I thought it was funny because my wife at the time was pregnant. Okay.
Yep.
And we're driving to set. This is fun. We're literally driving on Mulholland to set, and she had this little scene. She plays the intake,
I remember.
the pregnant kind of there. Yeah, that's my wife.
Yeah.
So we're driving, and there was nothing to that scene. It was just like literally, it was like you guys can't enter. That was pretty much it. Right. That was all. And so when we're driving, we're just talking and laughing about this, and we're looking at the scene, and it was her line. She's like, the mama's already been hooked up, and she stands up and she's pregnant to Sweet Lou. Hey, let me handle this. Hey, she's like, oh, mama's already been hooked up.
Yeah.
That was fun because it was just that we were cracking, and we didn't tell the guys the ad libs. So it was pretty funny when they were laughing so hard when she stood up and she showed up they're pregnant. It was like, anyway, that was funny because I got to go through that with my wife. It was just amazing. So that was good. I'm trying to think what just kind of behind the scenes. I mean, honestly, this was one of my favorite movies I've ever worked on. Just because behind the scenes, we're all friends. I mean, we're just a gang. I mean, we're just super. We hung out together. We're all hanging out. Behind in Video Village after every, and just kind of be just all really, really, really great guys. There were no. That's the thing is like sometimes in certain movies you have certain bad, certain elements that could be negative, whatever. This was one of those things where everyone just was there's a like every there's smiles and happiness, and I think that's what you can see it in the you can see the camaraderie between these guys because they actually all really liked each other. They really and they all we all hung out together, so that was really so behind the scenes. There's not really one incident, only that the cumulative kind of effect of being all friends was amazing, so fun.
Lovely, yeah. And that whole mum has been hooked up scene. I love that one because I remember saying to my partner the other day, I love that moment particularly because yeah, I read that was your wife, and I love that this was just you saying to the world, "Hey, everyone, look how hot my wife is. Too hot, even too hot for sweet." Lou." That was, I think that's very awesome.
Too hot
And
for Sweet Lou.
exactly, and the fact that you credited the unborn as in utero in the credits as well, I found that very wholesome.
Now
Um,
that boy by the way, that boy who's in utero is 21. He's at UCLA. That's how
wow.
and he's 6'3", so he's huge. So it's pretty. That's how it's crazy. It's crazy. Blink of an eye.
That's lovely. Yeah. Anyway, so another one of my favorite things about Grind is the chemistry between the five central cast members. Like I've rewatched this movie I think 6 times since I first saw it only like a month or two ago because it's one of these easy watching films for me that's about good times with the boys. Like it's it's a road trip, all the fellas are getting together, going on rambunctious adventures. And the chemistry between everyone just seems so organic. So you talked about the cast working together really well. And yeah, I think you've kind of answered this next question, but yeah, how did everyone go getting along? What was
Well, I
the
think they all kind of came in with really great attitudes, and they were all real young actors. I mean, they really all of them kind of were just starting out. This is that the if you look at all of them, they're just like kind of like they're all kind of they were the characters, right? They're super. This is kind of their story. They're trying to get seen. They're trying to get on this this they were living this in their real lives. So I think that they were all kind of you know bonded by that same adventure. And I think with that, which was fun for me too, is a lot of the stuff that they went through on the story. This is kind of going back to how the narrative and how the story came, but this is what we talked about a lot. Was when I was a kid, um, I had the same group of friends, very very similar group of friends, and we did not we didn't try to be skate, but we were surfers and skaters, and we kind of a lot of those things kind of happen in weird ways to us. And so me sharing kind of like, hey, it kind of, I don't know, it kind of, because it was true experience coming through a lot of this stuff, I think it bonded. But I think, at the end of the day, it's like, these guys, I just got really fortunate because when we were casting, we put a lot of different groups together. We were, we'd see, oh, this guy, and just kind of see, we did a lot of that casting. Nancy was fantastic with that. We're just putting like and so finally you put all four guys in the frame, like, okay, there's our guy. They have it. So that's kind of, I think, doing a lot of prep work beforehand, launched them, and we kind of, it worked out. It worked out.
nice. And do you still keep in contact with any of the central or supporting cast from Grind?
Not. I haven't talked to those guys in years. I mean, like, I run into Brody every once. I ran into Mike Vogel when I was out doing a movie out in North Carolina. I haven't seen Sweet Lou in forever. Vince I ran into a while back. Because you just kind of pop. I've had a couple. So after a while, I was throwing these like pumpkin carving parties for like years, and so those guys would constantly come be hanging out at my house after. But as time, I like end up getting kids and all that stuff. But we still text and stuff.
Nice. And so you said a lot of the script was written sort of on the fly, and there was a lot of improv. So if you didn't have way too much of a strict script, was there like any other really like really big improv moments in the film that you took note of?
I think one of my favorite lines in the entire movie was an improv that Sweet Lou came up with.
Yeah.
Guess what line that was?
Um,
It's one word, and it's my favorite line in the entère movie.
one
He
word.
says one. It's
Sweet
one
Lou.
word, and it's a tight shot on his face. Okay, when
Um, drawing a blank. I'm
okay,
sorry.
when that skater chick steals the van
Yep.
and you go right up to his face and he just goes, touche. that
That's
was that was all my boy. That was all him. I just oh, that, and yeah, and then also another improv, another Sweet Lou, a lot of Sweet Lou stuff. Like when we shot the club scene, when you pan up and you see Sweet Lou like dancing up there,
Yeah,
that
where's
was a
Sweet
total
Lou?
that like I saw somebody walk past that. I'm like, oh my gosh, it's back like that, and let's stick him up there at the end. So that there's again, that was a great gift. All
That
Sweet Lou
really was
stuff.
a
So
gift,
Sweet
yeah.
Lou. It's all Sweet Lou.
Yeah. Well, in fact, speaking of that scene, my favorite line in the whole movie, and it's one I've struggled to actually stop quoting in the past few weeks, is when Adam Brody is in the club and he says to that girl, "Let me just get you another glass of bitch." Now, was that scripted or was that all him?
That's a Brody line. That's his. That
Yes.
he gets that. He's, by the way, he's really funny. He's super super, and he's super smart. Like yeah, he had a lot. He had a lot of that. A lot of the stuff from him came from him. He really came up with that stuff, and he was really smart about his character too.
Nice. Nice. Anyway, so I know that the initial response to Grind, it's obviously a cult classic that's touched so many people, but I know the initial response was that it wasn't really a big hit. So when it came out and it kind of did sort of not the greatest numbers, what was your initial response to that?
Well, I was, again, I learned probably when it was, because there was a big conversation about how big is skateboarding, and we didn't have stars, and Warner Brothers was trying to figure out, okay, do we open it just a few different, quadrants, or do we open it wide? There was a big conversation of just, very, maybe four different territories, and then go right to DVD, or rolling the dice. Okay, so that conversation was ongoing, and then what happens is you test your movies, right? So originally it was supposed to be, we're going to open it in California and New York, and just there's a few territories, and then that will open up the space to slide the DVD market, right? And we'll go right in. So
Yeah.
we tested the film, and what happened is it was the highest scoring. It was like in 95th percentile when we tested. We got a standing O with our first test for Warner Brothers. The head of Warner Brothers there, and everyone was like, that was like it was like, holy moly, we have this is crazy. So that next Monday after the test was like, the distribution guys are like, wait, we have something here. And then they were like, well, let's test it one more time. And this might have been, you know what I mean? This might have been we test again, same numbers. Everyone was just like thrilled with the movie. Okay. So what happened was there was a decision made. Let's launch this thing super wide, and go for it. And so what happened was it launched super wide, and then nobody went to see the movie.
Mm.
Right? It was just like there was no stars, and it went up against, I think it was Freddy versus Jason. So like whatever that was the so basically that just cannibalized my entire audience. And it was a very, skateboarding, it was a niche. It's really, if you go back to it, really the way to release this type of film is obviously word of mouth. You want to release it super small and let it grow. You know what I mean? Let it grow. Kind of like Donnie Darko was no one saw Donnie Darko at that became, again, it was, Donnie Darko. It's those types of films are really, really kind of, let them grow, let the word of mouth, let the movie speak for itself. You don't want to shake the champagne because it is a niche. Like Donnie Darko was a niche, Grind's a kind of a niche. So that's kind of what happened. So I knew pretty early on, like kind of what was happening, and it was kind of devastating, because it was just like, wait a minute, I worked so hard on this thing, and then no one's going, and I was like, gosh, you really should have, really kind of slowly released this to get the people. um but at the end of the day, because it was such a low budget, it was great. And then all of a sudden, and then what happened was, is all of a sudden everyone was like, oh geez, no one's seen the movie. And then and it was funny because if you look at the critics, you look at the critic score and the audience score,
Yeah.
it's one of, I don't think I've ever seen
Authentic.
something so, because I made it for such a specific audience, right?
Yeah.
So then after, then it started getting legs, and when it kind of hit DVD, it just became, I've seen it 50 times. I know every, that's this kind of stuff here. And from Donnie, it's I'm the greatest, filmmaker to do these obscure films that end up becoming cult classics, like Donnie Darko. Like someone says, "Oh, you produced Donnie Darko? It's one of my favorite." You know what I mean? Like, but you talk to a mainstream audience, like, oh, I don't know what that is. You know what I mean? So yeah, so it was kind of at the time when it was released, it was kind of a kind of a bummer. But now I'm getting it's getting its due now.
Absolutely. So, in talking about the fact that so many people still pull you up about this film and the success it's had on DVD, how would you characterize the legacy of Grind 20 years later?
I can explain it. I mean, I don't. You know what I think it is? I think what happens is there was the kids that saw it from like 10 to 15 right there. It became like part of their, they would go home and they watch it over and over and over again. And so now those kids have all grown up, like, you know what I mean? And so they're like, they're remembering like, oh, when it pops, oh, that was really kind of, instrumental in my child. Just like when I see like projects like 80s comedies, that I love, like the John Hughes, like the Pretty in Pinks and stuff. So I have this real,
Yeah.
love for those types of projects, So I think that I don't know if there's anything culturally that's, like I just think I just think that I don't know. It's interesting to think about why now, because there has been a lot of kind of, I guess it's the 20th anniversary. I guess there's been a lot of kind of stuff of like fun of that stuff. But there has been, I don't know. It's interesting because it is one of those seminal movies for some people that 11 to 15 group in that time frame back in that time. It really was important. It really became kind of part of this, that growing up period, right? And yeah, it's so, but it's fun because I get, every out of the blue, I get people, checking in. I like Summer Altus, who played the gal in the movie who stole the van, and we're still buddies, and she's dating a clipper, and his like favorite movie was Grind, and I just sent him a poster, and he's like super excited. So you get like, you're like shocked about you know the adults now that were kids then. You know what I mean? So that's kind of fun.
Yeah, I think this movie is very much a product of that time because it's capturing the skating scene and like you've got the jackass scene on it as well. And when I first saw it, it felt a lot to me like the 2004 film Euro Trip, but with skateboarding instead of Europe. Have you seen that one?
No, was that Todd? That wasn't Todd Phillips, was it? Euro Trip?
No, that was
No,
Road Trip.
Road Trip. Right, right, right. I
Yeah.
never saw Road Euro Trip.
Okay, yeah, I like to think they're very similar. Like the characters are very similar. There's a character called Cooper Harris, and I think he's that film's Matt Wallace and all that. But anyway, I won't get into that too much. But love both films. Now, would you like to tell anyone watching what it is you're going to be working on next?
Yeah, we talked a little. I don't know if we talked about 1974, which is the prequel to Amityville. That's the next project. I mean, just came off. I did a movie with Justin Baldoni, this thing called Clouds, which was a thing I did for Disney, which was a true story of this young man. He died. He was 17 of osteosarcoma, which is a rare cancer, and I did that for Disney, and so which is a very very heartfelt drama. I'd produced years ago a movie called A Walk to Remember with Mandy Moore, very similar, and now the next project I'm doing is the complete opposite. Very hardcore haunted house movie with a lot of blood and guts and jump scares. So that's the next pilgrimage that I'm going on.
Awesome. Awesome. Alrighty. And I want to wrap this interview up with one last query and I guess a little bit of a story. So the way that I came to discover Grind was my partner Elsbeth about 15, 20 years ago, whatever, when she was back in high school, like one of her biggest hobbies was her and her best friend Claire would go to the local video store up in, I think it was Monbulk, which is like Australian country town. And they'd get all the new releases. They came across Grind. They loved it, rewatched it so many times. They both had a crush on Sweet Lou. And she introduced that movie to me. And I just remember thinking, why did it take me this long to discover this film? I'm long overdue to watch this movie. And she was recently actually in hospital. I went to visit her, and while she was in the hospital bed, we actually just like lied in bed and watched Grind together. It was really nice. So, as since this movie has so much sentimental meaning for her and for her best friend Claire, I was wondering, could I possibly get you to give a shout out to Elsbeth and Claire as some of your biggest fans?
Elsbeth and Claire, thank you for the love you're giving my movie. I hope it inspires you to laugh and have a good time. Watch it over and over again.
So they've been doing it for, well, more than 20 years now, and they're going to have me doing it for the next 20 years. So
That makes me it makes me feel good that, someone, like, really appreciates the movie, and, it brings them joy, and, and they can laugh at it, and that's 'cause that's, like, for me, like, going through this crazy time that we're in the world, and it's just
yeah,
any opportunity to just escape, because I wish there were more, just really kind of big comedies out there that you could just disappear into. I love comedy, like, that's kind of what I love to watch, and I always go back to those, the old time, the '80s comedies when I need to, like, kind of get uplifted and watch them over and over again. So that makes me feel good that at least, that there's people out there that are being, they're enjoying it and they're entertained by it, because that was the whole point.
absolutely. Yep. And then they're spreading the love because yeah, Elsbeth showed it to me, and then in return I gave her this for her birthday, which she was over the moon about. So
Super
yep,
duper, super duper skates.
that's it. No merch drop. Anyway, I think we can wrap it up there. Casey, thank you so much for taking the time to speak to me, for all your insight and everything. I really can't thank you enough, but I really appreciate all this. So thank you very much.
You got it. I appreciate all the love.
All
Have
the time.
fun.